At Elevate One Consulting, we specialize in executive, business, and accountability coaching tailored just for you. Discover the power of enhanced leadership skills, improve performance, and increase self-awareness. Our expert coaches will help you navigate challenges, articulate your vision, and establish a work-life balance. With Elevate One Consulting, you get proven methodologies to drive growth and success, insightful feedback and personalized strategies, clear goals, and actionable plans. Whether you're a C-suite executive, business owner, or entrepreneur, our coaching programs are designed to help you thrive. Visit www.elevateoneconsulting.com and take your first steps towards a focused future. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Welcome back to The Unbroken Place, where it begins and ends with empathy. I'm your host, Eddie Paul Thomas, and I hope that your week is off to a good start. This week, I'm sharing a really cool conversation I had with Jason Kay about building an excellent team culture. Jason is not only the author of Journey into a Rainforest Team Culture, a book that shares his best practices and insights on building high-performing, engaging team cultures, but he's also the director of onboarding and enablement for the delivery organization at RealPage Inc., where he leads a global team of over 30 trainers and crafting and executing top-tier onboarding and enablement strategy for the company's worldwide delivery team. I can't wait to share this conversation with you, so let's get started. Jason, thank you so much for joining us here on The Unbroken Place. I've followed your work on LinkedIn, and we have a mutual friend who kind of introduced the two of us, and I'm so excited to have you on to talk about really something that all leaders should be very interested in, and I think could really help us in dealing with this new generation of employees that are coming down the pike, and that's building and maintaining excellent team culture. So thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Eddie. Thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll jump right in. You have this amazing book. If you are looking right now, you'll see it. Beautiful green book. It is Journey to a Rainforest Team Culture. I've started the book and I was drawn in from the very second. I wonder, as I think about your book, you use the metaphor of a rainforest to describe team culture. Could you kind of elaborate on what that metaphor represents and why you chose it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been kind of involved in some sort of storytelling my whole life. I started as pursuing a stage acting career in Chicago in my 20s. Once I got into the corporate world, post some twins who entered my life, I found myself drawn into like leadership where I could facilitate classes, so still getting up in front of people. And so what I've found in my life is that analogies and stories help concrete ideas into people. And so when I was looking at this framework that I developed for myself as a leader and was looking for a way to communicate it where people could really relate to it, more than just this philosophical idea of how to lead and build a team culture, the rainforest is what stepped up. And it's just this idea of being this diverse, interconnected ecosystem that is really influenced by every part of it, by every person in it. And when you think about legitimate ecosystems, you think of the plant and animal species, the sunshine, the rain, all the things help shape what that environment is. And it's really startling how much of a parallel it has to actually leadership and team culture.
That's wonderful. I think it's brilliant. In many ways represents systems thinking, as you kind of embrace and think about the ecosystem and interconnectedness of every part of an organization. I picked that up very quickly from the beginning of your book, and I love that. So I'm going to ask a question that you probably get a lot, and doing the type of work you're doing, I'm wondering from your experience, what are the most critical elements of that contribute to building an excellent team culture?
Sure. What I've found, and again, just to kind of lay a foundation with you, Eddie,
Mm-hmm.
I am a leader right now. Like
Yeah.
I'm not disconnected from being in the leadership world. I have direct reports. And so the the tools that I provide in the book, what I do in coachings and trainings that I have is real world experience that
Mm-hmm.
I've lived through. So they're not just theoretical, they're practical, and I use them every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And for me, some of the foundational elements that I've found to be most successful in creating team cultures are trust, communication, autonomy, and shared purpose.
Yeah.
Trust obviously is a foundation of it all. If you don't have trust, you don't have a whole lot going on. You're not going to get very far, right? That's almost
Yeah.
the wheels on the car. Without the wheels, you're not going very far at all.
Yeah.
There's the idea of communication. That's pretty obvious. Autonomy is helps your employees understand their role and how to own the things that they do. And so I'm a big proponent of autonomy and how you get work done. And then last but not least is shared purpose. If you all
Mhm.
understand the direction you're moving, what your end goals are, it helps everyone make better decisions, and really holds everyone accountable for getting across the same finish line.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I I can see all of that and understand how leaders could utilize every aspect of what you're saying in their businesses. I'm thinking about specifically in conscious leadership, which is what I just I live it, I breathe it. Any one of my clients that I work with,
Wow.
really it takes some time to adapt to those concepts. But with conscious leadership, one of the most important tenets is awareness of not just your surroundings and what you're coming into, but of yourself and what kind of things you're bringing through the door when you're presenting as a leader. Am I utilizing my leadership as a sword and shield, or am I more so doing it embracing people? And it can be a very different experience depending on where you're coming in.
It can, and so I belong to the Dallas chapter of Conscious Capitalism, which is a
Hmm.
not-for-profit org that kind of drives that same philosophy. And one of the tenets that resonates with me the most is that idea of being conscious of your stakeholders.
Yeah.
So looking at your board of directors, your investors, your employees, your customers, the environment, and
Hmm.
if you can create business that makes profit without sacrificing one of those to benefit the others,
Yeah.
that is conscious leadership. Like, as I put it, that's boilerplate conscious leadership. If you're
Yeah.
sacrificing, and most of the time, Eddie, at least from my view, customers and employees get sacrificed the most on the altar of profit.
Hmm.
Uh, and so if you can balance all of that, where everyone in that ecosystem is being served by your business,
Hmm.
you're doing something that most companies are not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's as I kind of look at the tenets you laid out earlier, and us talking about authenticity and conscious capitalism. I look at within that first chapter of your book, man, folks, if you're listening, you'll get a feeling right away that there will be an emotional response to the opening of this book. I look at your character, Eliza. Is it Eliza?
Full
Eliza Hawkins.
manager, yeah.
Um, she does something, and it's her situation is very different. It's one, if you come in from the ground up and you're building your reputation and the culture and stuff like that. But it's different when you're coming into a situation where it's already hostile. It's
Mm.
already somewhat toxic, if you will. So, in the opening chapters, it's very clear that Eliza's facing this toxic team culture. What steps would you recommend for leaders who find themselves in that similar situation? Not necessarily, developing themselves along the way. But you've been given this opportunity to go to a wonderful company. They're making tons of money, but you come in and whew, it is World War III in there.
Yeah. Yeah. The first step that I would take is to listen and observe,
Hmm.
to get as much context as you can about the
Right.
environment you stepped into. Now, that's not to say you should delay conversations if there are overt violations of ethics or overt, verbal or physical violence is happening within the work environment. You need to address those right away.
Yeah.
But also you need to understand where that root cause is coming from. Everything has a root cause. And so to dig in and ask questions and listen and make observations is really the first place that I would start before trying to fix anything. And then there's that idea of starting with a clean slate, right?
Yeah.
At one point in the book, Eliza does address some historical grievances that a couple of employees have with each other. And she says, look, I wasn't here for that. I don't know. I appreciate the knowledge, but moving forward, and then she sets the expectations for what she wants to happen from this point forward.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple of techniques you can use, again, depending on the extreme of the situation. But listening, observing, asking questions, gathering context, and then just setting new expectations moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's sound. It sounds very similar to, one of the things that I encourage people to do when I'm consulting or, speaking in front of a group. It's think of your office. If you're a leader, you have to think of your office in many cases as kind of a doctor's office. If you're a doctor, it's kind of ironic that I'm mentioning the doctor's office, but the, the idea is that when you're meeting a new patient, when you're coming into a new space, you can't just come in with all the cures.
Right.
It's the analogy I have is like putting a Band-Aid on things that sometimes need surgery. And so it takes time to unpack those layers, similar to what Eliza had to do, which, man, again, just some serious PTSD from some really bad situations early in my career when I just listened to some of the toxic conversations she had to deal with.
Yeah.
You really have to take that time and listen to folks. What are they saying? What are they not saying? What is their body language saying?
And Eddie, not judging
Yeah.
conclusions, because look, as a leader, I have never, ever in my 20 plus years of leading teams built a team from scratch. I have always inherited teams that were in existence.
Yeah.
And there have been times where the first week, I thought a specific person may be the challenge to a healthy team culture. But as I kept an open mind, I learned very quickly, actually, their behavior is rooted in other people's behavior, and it's more of a symptom than it is the cause of the bad team culture. So being patient and being open-minded can be really tough, but it's critical when you inherit a new team.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because the most challenging thing that I have for most of my clients is that sense of urgency to solve it so they can move. We need to move to the thing and make more money. And we've got these financial goals to meet. Yeah. So yes, fostering a positive culture is a great idea. That's I'm giving you the feedback that I have often. It's a great idea, but we've got to meet these deadlines. We've got to meet our goals. We've got benchmarks and da 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 da. And so for me, I know that one of the things that I'm able to do, and this is where some of my friends just kind of laugh because I'm a data studies guy. I can bring the data and I can bring the studies and not just tell them what happens when you have a positive culture, but I can also tell them the financial ramifications if you don't. And it's very, very helpful to be able to tell them, hey, this kind of behavior is going to lead to X, turnover, lawsuits, what have you. And then it's kind of the pump your brakes moment. But I'm thinking, just in terms of your experience, when you think about trying to balance that need for achieving financial goals with fostering a positive team culture, how does that work with those that you've been working with?
So in order to balance those two, I try to put what is stereotypically the cart before the horse, which
Mm.
is the people before the profit. Because my job as a leader is not to do all the things; it's to clear the road and set up my employees for their abilities to deliver on the goals.
Right.
Currently oversee a team of 30 plus people across the globe. We onboard product support agents and implementation agents. I don't facilitate those classes, but
Hmm.
I lead the people who do. And so my job isn't to facilitate the learning. My job is to facilitate their ability to facilitate the learning. And so my lens that I look through is not what's the end result of their job, but what's the end result of my job. My job is to make their lives easier, smoother, more efficient, more productive. They can do their job. Ultimately, their job will lead to better customer service, quicker call
Yeah.
handling times, etc.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I balance those two. My culture down the line will ultimately produce the results the business is looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a quick process. It's never a quick fix. But
No, yeah, that's the challenge with, I'm sure you know, is going in and consulting is great.
Mhm.
Need this done by next week.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. But okay, well,
Yeah.
we'll start it next week.
Yeah. And it's often a very interesting conversation, depending on the person I have in the room, where we're discussing the strategy versus the lifestyle change that needs to to occur. And I can imagine. I know that you emphasize, just reading some of your stuff online, and obviously what you're trying to get across in your book. Um, you emphasize bringing joy, enthusiasm, purpose to work. How do you see those elements influencing team performance and engagement?
Every study has shown that a happy employee is a better employee, is a more
Hmm.
productive employee, is a more loyal employee. So
Hmm.
people often mistake the impact that something like joy and enthusiasm bring to their culture. It doesn't define it, but it lays the table for other things that will lead to innovation and long tenure and growth and profit. So when people have things like happy hours or company retreats or
Hmm.
pizza parties, those things are awesome, but they are literally the foundation of happiness on which you can build engagement. And
Yeah.
that's one thing, Eddie, that I haven't met a lot of people who look at employee engagement and employee satisfaction the way I do. I see it as two very different things. Satisfaction is something that meets your base needs, right? Are you happy at work? Do you feel safe at work? Are you excited to show up? Do you like the people you work with? Do you have the tools and resources you need to do your job? Do you get paid what you want? Do you have a good benefits package? Those are all like baseline needs.
Yeah.
That's being satisfied. Engagement is when you can get into a more altruistic purpose of your job. It's when you feel empowered to be innovative, when you want to grow with the company. But people aren't understanding that foundation and how to build on it. They think, oh, well, we throw parties and we do happy hours, so that'll automatically lead to more productivity. And that's not the
Right.
case. People can
Right.
be happy at work, but not engaged.
Right. Right. It's if I'm wrong, definitely let me know. But it seems as if when employees become more engaged, there might be some sort of correlation between the mindset that goes from this is a job to this is a career. Am I wrong on that?
Totally. And even if it's not as far as this is a career, this is where I want to stay,
Mm-hmm.
it's becoming moving away from just being invested in you or the people you like in the business,
Yeah.
being invested in solving the problems of the business, evolved in solving the problems of the customers. And that's where you take it to from a me to a we kind of attitude.
Right. 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 We'll be back with The Unbroken Place in just a moment.
Are you ready to transform your team culture and drive long-term business success? Introducing Cultivating a Rainforest Team Culture, the leadership training that will revolutionize how you lead. This program, based on the book Journey to a Rainforest Team Culture, is unlike most leadership programs, which only scratch the surface of what a leader needs to lead a team. Cultivating a Rainforest Team Culture offers a holistic framework that shows you exactly how to build and sustain a high-performing team culture. Don't settle for the usual. Step into a new era of leadership where your team's success is built on actionable, people-centered strategies. Book your immersive, day-long training today and see the difference a comprehensive approach can make. Visit www.jasonk.com now to start the conversation. That's www.jasonkae.com. Transform your leadership, transform your team, deliver results.
Revitalize your brand and accelerate your impact with Eddie and Erica at Elevate One Consulting. Experts in organizational development, digital marketing, and much more. From leadership coaching to creating unforgettable digital experiences, we've got you covered. Visit elevateoneconsulting.com today. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. And we're back. I love that. I think I'm just curious because there's Jason, who does this very, very well. And then, you've got a global team of over 30 trainers. How do you ensure consistency in the onboarding experience while also adapting to cultural differences?
That's a really good question. So I've got there's me as the director. I've got a series of managers, and then they have a series of direct reports.
Mm-hmm.
So what I try to do is one, lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
I treat my managers the way I want them to treat their employees, and we openly talk about their needs. It's honestly, it's a little bit easier because I have the book. Like I inherited a new employee in a recent org shift, and she said, I went out and I bought your book and I read it and I went, I can work for that guy. I went, great. That's great. And it's not just something that I wrote, like I try to live it. And so I can give them a very clear example of this is my approach to leadership. These are the things that I focus on and care about to get results.
Mm-hmm.
That's really how I scale it is that. And then I have one-on-one meetings regularly with my directs. I encourage them to do the same. I ask about not only how are people doing as far as their productivity or their student surveys that they have out after facilitating learning. How are they doing as human beings? How is their kid? Their kid was sick. I'll follow up on that. How are they doing? They were out on PTO. How was their vacation? So just lots of communication and living it, walking the talk.
Yeah. It's amazing how many leaders can make time for doing that when they trust the people that they hire to do their jobs, as opposed to being that bottleneck that everything's got to flow through. Right? I just see, process wise, how that could certainly work when, leadership, whether it be on the executive side or management or what have you, just trust that person. You brought them in to do this task, check in with them, but you don't need to necessarily have your thumb on them to make sure that everything is getting done.
Well, and honestly, Eddie, I found that in the past when leaders do have their thumb constantly down on people, it's because the results they're looking for aren't clear or
Yeah.
continuously are shifting,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like at the beginning of this year, and it's one of the first times in my career, Eddie, that I've been able to do it, is I had very clear bucketed goals on what we were going to do and how we were going to do it.
Mhm.
And so this is one of the best times in my career for being able to give that autonomy to my leaders and to my staff to do what they need to do, because we have set extraordinarily clear and defined objectives for what we're trying to do.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, that's one of the reasons. Other reasons, but you know.
Well, I love connecting with consultants because we all have our little things, like our little nuggets that are very unique to Jason and things that are unique to Eddie in terms of what we bring to the table. And without giving away too much of your secret sauce, what strategies do you use to measure and improve employee satisfaction with your team? Because that's a very specific thing.
Yeah. So regular surveys, regular check-ins, team feedback sessions. In the past, we've done start, stop, and continue sessions where the employees they give us feedback on, we want to start doing these things need to stop, and let's continue these things because they're making us happy. So honestly, it's communication, and asking questions, and then following through on the ideas that they've given you, or communicating about maybe why those ideas can't be implemented, right? Yeah. We want free lunches every Friday. Well, fortunately, the budget doesn't allow for that. Maybe we can do it once a quarter. So just honest and open communication and being available.
And I want to emphasize, folks, as you're listening to Jason and I talk about building and maintaining that team culture that we all want, this has to be genuine. It cannot be a something that people can read right away as false or fake or not genuine. The ability of you to speak with employees and connect with them has to be something that you're working at personally, and they can feel it. There's an energy that you bring when you're asking me about my kid's soccer game. I mean, if you're coming in and you're not even, there's no eye contact, you're just kind of walking through, how's the soccer game? And you're not even around for the answer. It's very clear. You're not really engaged. You're not really invested in me as a employee, number one, but as a person, more importantly, I won't feel that. So when Jason says communication, there's a very specific type of communication that he's referring to. Which goes to another question I have. I've got tons of them today here.
That's okay. Why?
So, in terms of communication, I know for many organizations, it's important to have mentorship and coaching. And for you specifically, as we're talking about healthy team culture, how do you approach that with your organization?
As far as mentorship
and coaching.
Yeah. So I think mentorship, there's a couple different types of mentorship. Mm-hmm. One is someone who knows how to do the job that you need to learn how to do.
Yeah.
And so there's that level of mentorship. You've been working on this line for 10 years. I'm going to sit with you. You're going to teach me some tips and tricks about how to execute in a great way. Thank you. It's a mentorship role. I can come to you and I have questions about the job. Then there's the mentorship role around growth. And Simon Sinek had one of my favorite posts about mentorship, saying that mentorship isn't a one-way street. If someone is your mentor, in a way, you're also their mentor. You should be learning both ways. And so if it's just one-sided, like you have nothing to contribute to the other person, it feels a little stilted. But when you get in an environment where you're learning something from someone that you can also teach them, that's that true emotional, professional kind of growth that I think people are looking for when they say mentorship. And then coaching, and coaching is a hard one because that word is so misused in our common. It doesn't mean to have corrective action conversations. Coaching means to take somebody who has a certain level of expertise and knowledge and to ask them questions to guide them to a solution for a problem that they have come up with themselves. And then to continue to ask questions or offer reflections on what you're seeing in their body language or hearing in their responses that they may want to examine further or expand upon. Too often, especially in the learning space, Eddie, this employee needs to be coached. No, they don't. They need a corrective action conversation, which is, hey, you can't talk to customers like this, or hey, you followed the wrong process and this resulted in X. Those aren't coaching conversations. Those are corrective action conversations to change behavior. Coaching is, hey, boss, this is the situation. What should I do? Well, you've been an agent for 2 years. What do you think the next step should be? Well, I was thinking I should do X, Y, and Z. That's great. If you did that, what do you think the result is going to be? Well, I think it's probably this or that. Okay. Are there any negative sides to that action? Well, this could happen. All right. If that happens, what are you going to do then? What are you going to do next? That's a coaching conversation. But and anyone who's in consulting and learning and development or executive coaching knows that word gets so misused that sometimes it's confusing to people.
Yeah, it certainly can be, especially when those doing the coaching aren't asking questions as much as they are really being a consultant, where they're there to solve the problem as opposed to letting the individual solve the problem themselves. So I think that's a fascinating point. I think it's a really good point that our leaders can listen to and kind of chew on a little bit as they think about the way that they're coaching or coaching up the next person on staff.
Yeah.
My brain is thinking about some of the clients that I've had before, and I've had these conversations. I'm not going to give my secret sauce away. I'm going to make you do it this time. Okay. The fast-paced industries.
Yeah.
Which you bring up one in your book. Again, folks, if you are just now joining us, it is a wonderful conversation, narrative more so than conversation, journey to a rainforest team culture. Jason, my thought goes to the fast-paced industry group where sustaining team engagement can be very challenging just because they are on to the next task, and trying to meet these hardcore deadlines or goals that are set for them. And sometimes, quite frankly, how they can feed their family is tied to hitting these goals. So my question for you would be, what would be your top tips for keeping a team engaged over the long term?
So keeping a team engaged, one, you've got to have that communication. Again, I think that's the foundation to all great team cultures. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? What are we trying to achieve? Recognizing milestones or achievements publicly, or even one-on-one. Hey, you helped us hit this goal. You helped us reach this milestone. And then last is something that not a lot of leaders do, which is have a debrief or a post-mortem once a project is complete. This will really help everyone in general, but those people who are perfectionists, who are overachievers, who never see a project as being done until someone says, we're done. They keep tinkering and keep trying to improve. Having that debrief, project is over, what went well, what are our lessons learned, put it on the shelf, and we move on to the next one.
Yeah. What do you see, kind of sticking with that same group, the fast-paced environment groups? Actually, let's slow it down. The majority of the clients that I work with are in the nonprofit sector.
Right.
And some of the most well-meaning people you'll ever meet. They're sacrificing a lot in terms of their time and talents, and quite frankly, if they did marketing or whatever it is that they're doing for that nonprofit, they could be making a lot more money elsewhere. So they're dedicated to this cause. But I do work with a lot of individuals who make a lot of mistakes, different mistakes when it comes to building strong team culture. They love one another. It's almost a family type atmosphere. But what are some of those common mistakes that you see leaders making when it comes to building their strong team culture, and how can they avoid those?
I think you bring up a really common scenario, which is leaders focusing on the relationship aspect of building team cultures, but not driving home the accountability of what they want to achieve. And so kindness and empathy are at the foundation of it. But if you're not achieving business goals, either you're not going to be around or the company's not going to be around for very long.
Right.
So they stop at that foundation and they go, but my employees like me or my customers like me. And that's important. But what's more important is, not more important, what the next step is driving accountability for achieving the results. And how do you do that?
Right.
So really, that's one of the most common areas I see leaders get stuck. They're worried that their employees won't like them, that their employees will think ill of them if they push them. But again, if you're clear with the outcomes you're trying to achieve, everyone understands what the goal is. Everyone understands what the target is. That's one of the most common missteps I see in building team cultures is no accountability for results.
Yeah. I see that, and I see also that, in the environment that we are in now, with quiet quitting, going on, and for me, it's not so quiet. The data makes it seem the opposite. It's screaming quitting.
Yeah.
But you've got quiet quitting. There are organizations, because some of the financial foundations are not giving as much money anymore. Some of the grants that are out there are a little more stingy in terms of how much they're giving out to support a given organization. So there's a lot of change, and I see, mergers and organizations coming together, and having to deal with a lot of disruption. So I'm curious, in your experience, how do you maintain a positive team culture during times of significant change or disruption?
It's really challenging, especially when you're talking about acquisitions, merging companies, when you're talking about organizational change that leads to layoffs.
Mm-hmm.
One of the foundations of the leadership framework that I wrote about is the tone of your team.
Yeah.
Is it a safe and supportive tone? People have psychological safety. And when something as disruptive as a merger, as an acquisition, as layoffs are, it cuts off the culture at the knees to some degree for some amount of time. And as a leader, you need to recognize that things like innovation or personal ability to invest in the company are going to go out the window for a little while. And you've got to be okay with that, because long term, it's potentially better for the company or better for the org structure. So when those kind of really disruptive things happen, you have to take time to empathize. You've got to take time to be available and answer questions. You have to be as transparent as you can. And we all know that in leadership roles, there are times that there are things you can't share. There are having meetings where you're workshopping where the company's going. You yourself as a leader have to understand really at your core why this change was made. the reason behind it. Whether you agree with it or not, I'm not saying you have to drink the Kool-Aid and, just be rah-rah for the company. You can say, hey, I understand this move was impactful. Some of our friends are no longer on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the long-term strategy of the company. While it really hurts, this is where we're moving with the company. And so let's pull together and let's be there for one another. And of course, you can stay in touch with that person who's been let go. They can still be your friend outside of work. So just being as honest as possible as you can with the changes that are happening and giving people what they need. They need time, they need space, they need another conversation. You provide them with that.
Yeah. Never easy. It doesn't matter what industry it is. It's just never easy. Well, Jason, this has been a very, very impactful conversation. Hopefully for leaders out there or aspiring leaders. I know that the work that you're doing keeps me thinking. I love watching your content on LinkedIn specifically, and I'm enjoying what I'm reading from the book. How can people follow your work and maybe learn more about the Rainforest structure?
Yeah, absolutely. So LinkedIn is my primary place to focus. People who are into leadership content, that's pretty much their go-to as well. So I'd say follow me on LinkedIn. And then you can go to my website, and it's www.jasonk.com. And I just finished my page announcing the rollout of my instructor-led training that I developed off of the book. So I am in the process of looking for individual leaders or companies who want to pilot this day-long session that teach your leaders how to drive employee satisfaction and foster employee engagement so that you can have some long-term success with your team cultures.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, man. This has been great. We'll definitely have to get you back on. There's so much more to unpack with leadership and growth and development and really learning ways to thrive with this new generation of workers out there.
Yeah. And the words to end with, leadership is not easy, and it's an everyday thing, and you have to put the effort in every single day. There is no set it and forget it with leadership. So you're going to have up days, you're going to have down days. Just keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Words to live by, folks. The Unbroken Place podcast is presented by Elevate One Consulting. The show is produced by Say Something Studios. Learn more about both of these in the show notes. The show's music is performed by Little Glass Men and Captive Portal. We want to thank you for being a part of the Unbroken Place community. Look for an ongoing conversation on Instagram and Facebook at the handle @UnbrokenPlace. You can also find some helpful resources at eddiepaulthomas.com. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter called OK on Second Thought on LinkedIn. Until next time, one love. At the Say Something Studios division of Elevate One Consulting, we don't just build websites, we craft unforgettable digital experiences. Imagine a place where design, development, UX, SEO, and management harmonize to elevate your brand to unprecedented exposure. A place where your website is not just seen, but felt, experienced, and remembered. Our expert team, equipped with unparalleled marketing insight, turns the everyday task of website design and management into a seamless, empowering journey. With Elevate One, you're not just launching a website, you're embarking on a transformative business adventure. We meticulously design every aspect, from intuitive navigation to stunning graphics, ensuring your digital space authentically represents your business ethos. Ready to transform your online presence into a thriving digital masterpiece? Visit us now at www.elevateoneconsulting.com and start your journey to digital excellence. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate.